Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, March the 6th, and it is a sunshiny day, so we are here in the sunroom. Technically the temperature is about -1 Celsius, so hovering right around the 30-degree Fahrenheit mark. But as always, when it is sunshiny, this room is just glorious. So I honestly, when I first came in here to start pulling everything together, I was like going, maybe you need to be in short sleeves because it is quite lovely in here. And then I thought, well, depending on how it's like, if it clouds over or whatever, it can cool down in a hurry. So I am, with all the excitement of 3/4 sleeves last week, I am wearing long sleeves this week, but I don't need a poncho and I don't need a sweater, which means you'd think that we're turning the corner, but we're not. Today and tomorrow are going to be the warmest days of the week here, and then it's going to get, cold. So highs of about, 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, it's chilly for the rest of the week, but I'm going to ignore that and just sort of go, right now it's sunshiny and gloriously warm. As with last week, yeah, still thoughts and prayers going out to the people of the Ukraine. Yeah, the videos coming from there are just not good. So anyway, as I've said, unfortunately, there's nothing that I can do about that. But we'll talk a little bit about, sadly, a little bit more about the Ukraine in a little bit. So did want to respond to some of the comments on last week's video. So thank you for the good comments that you found the video helpful. That's good. So as always, if you've got any comments, questions that you'd like me to address, feel free to put those in the comments down below. I did appreciate the comment from someone who said that they had been having some struggles with loading their fabric into Q-snaps, and that they felt that some of the commentary for how to load fabric onto scroll rods was as relevant for them on Q-snaps. So thank you for the comment. That's good to know. I had a moment going like, I don't know if I load fabric into my Q-snaps any differently, but anyway, I kind of went, don't know about that, and then moved on to something else. But I'm glad that it helped. Melody left a comment that said that she only uses Arabesque scroll frames and they're her favorites, which is great. She said she does get them on Amazon. And she said, again, she wasn't sure if you could get them on Amazon Canada. And I can get them on Amazon Canada. Actually, the reason why I ended up ordering directly from the Ukraine for those ones is because, the pricing that you see on Amazon when it's coming from a third party does include their shipping costs. And it was actually cheaper for me to get them directly from the Ukraine than it was for me to buy them from Amazon. So again, did the price comparison, went with the cheaper option. Really glad that I have them, but yeah, that's an option. And again, the availability right now for those, I don't know, I haven't checked since the invasion as to what the status of those items are, but Amazon is another option, and they may be in the Amazon warehouse ready for shipping. And I'm listening to my voice again going, here we go again. So at some point, we all know I'm gonna have to take a drink, right? I do take a drink before I come on here, and I have no idea why. I don't think I get the itchy nose quite as much as some people do, but apparently my voice decides to not like the videos. And then got a comment around sort of, we were talking last week about sort of the tension all the way across, and the ends being floppy. And got a comment that said one of the things that they found helpful, I've lost the name, it's Anna in Spain, I'm pretty sure, that said one of the things that she's found is using a shorter sidebar. In fact, quite a short sidebar. So 10 centimeters, which is approximately 4 inches, helps keep that tension. Now, that concept I absolutely agree with. I do find that the longer that the sidebars are, the easier it is for you to get those sort of floppy sides. So I do agree. I too like a shorter sidebar. Mine are probably in the 6 to 8 inch range. So 4 inches feels really, really narrow for me. But again, with everything that goes on in stitching, you have to find the thing that works for you, period. If 4 inches works for you, that's fantastic. Like I say, I think a little bigger is better for me. If you're one of those people that says, I like to have a huge section of my project visible and it works for you, that's fantastic. As always, certainly the things that I talk about are my views. They are my experiences. They relate to how I stitch, and they may not necessarily be the right thing for you, and that's okay. It never hurts to hear somebody's opinion and see if they've got something that works for you. It was funny this week because I was watching a couple of Flosstube videos this week from some new Flosstube from new people to me, so I'm not necessarily going to mention their names, where it was very, very interesting because I was sitting there and I was like going, I totally disagree with you. My experience is the complete opposite. So it was really interesting because I had a couple of them this week where I was like going, wow, those are your views on that particular subject and my views are exactly opposite. And that's not to say that I'm right and they're wrong, or they're right and I'm wrong. We each have views on what works for us and how we feel about certain fabrics. Or what was the other one? Like, there were, I think one of them was actually on scroll rods as well. So it was interesting. It was an interesting couple of videos because as I've said before, I like to talk to the videos while they're going on, where I was like going, I don't think that's correct. I think you've got that backwards. I think it's the reverse. I think it's, now again, but that's my views and my experiences and how I like things. It's, you know, I equate it to, like, there are people who love stitching on Aida, and I think that's fantastic. If that's where your jam is at, stitch on Aida and only stitch on Aida. There are people who only like stitching on linen. If that's your jam, stitch on linen. And then there's people like me who prefer stitching on even weaves. That's my jam. Doesn't mean Aida's wrong or that linen is wrong. Find the thing that works for you. So always remember, when you're watching any floss tuber, take it with a grain of salt. It's their views, their experiences, what they like, and if you like something different, that's great too. Find the thing that works for you. We're going to talk about that as something comes up over here as well. All right. There were a couple of things that came up while I was getting ready to put in my Nashville order. And I didn't bring them up last week because it didn't feel right. It still feels a little bit funny today to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway because it relates to a couple of charts that I saw that were available for pre-orders from Nashville, and I just thought they were funny. So we all need a little bit of humor in the midst of very trying situations. So here is our moment of levity. There was a chart that says, marriage, when dating goes too far. I thought that was funny. The other one was measure twice, cut once, and then force it to fit. And I think we've all, I feel like we've all been in circumstances where that's been relevant. So there's your funny moment. The other thing that came up this week was, I think it was, this is learning moments. on Instagram from Fiberlicious, and it had to do with, come on, there we go. It had to do with the way people see color. Come on. It's become apparent that the ability to see various colors varies widely from person to person. The reason for this stems from differences in the number of cone cells each of us has inside our eyes. These cells function as photoreceptors. The number you have affects how many colors of the visible light spectrum you can pick out. And then they gave you a light spectrum and said count how many colors you can see in here. So the result was not, for me, not surprisingly, because I do feel like I can see color fairly well. Oh, come on. These devices that want to, you know. So I could see the maximum number of colors in the range that they gave, which said you have tetrachromatic vision, much like bees. You possess 4 different kinds of cone cells in your eyes and see the majority of colors in the visible light spectrum. The chances are you're not a fan of yellow. Only 25%. You're not a fan of yellow, and you have next to no yellow clothing in your wardrobe. I have no yellow. I have no yellow clothing in my wardrobe. Only 25% of people can see all the colors in the spectrum. So there were 3 categories. The lowest number tend to wear a lot of neutrals, blue, black, gray, because they don't really see much of, they don't see a lot of the colors in the spectrum. Yeah, so 25% of the world's population have 2 cone cells. Then 50% of the population have 3, are trichromatic, so they have 3 cone cells. You are able to perceive purple, dark blue, green, and red colors well. And then there are people like me, according to this lovely, very scientific test on Instagram around how many colors I can see. But I just thought, for me, the really funny thing was what they said. Chances are, if you're in this category, you don't like yellow. Which I just thought it was a really fascinating comment. Because, as we all know, it's not that I think that yellow is a bad color. I just, there's about 47 colors that I like before we get to that color. Okay, I'm going to just start off with the drink because it's not getting any better. All right, with that, let's get into some stitching. It's been a pretty productive week for me. I had an order all picked out, and I've decided I'm going to do it differently. Okay, so let's start off with sampler stitches. So this is the 9-part series of charts by the Drawn Thread, which I am doing as a stitch along, as hosted by Sarah, the Stitchin' Mommy. And yeah, there's lots of things over here. So how did I do this week? So here's where I'm at now. So I didn't get quite as much done on D. I was really hoping to get all of D accomplished, and I didn't get that accomplished. And I was like, going, why is that? Oh yeah, I remember it took me longer to get everything uploaded than I was originally expecting. So got some of D done while I had the navy blue out. I started working on E. I was looking at my calendar. Technically, if I have a really good stitching night tonight, if I can finish off these bits here. There's not as much stitching as it may look. There is a charm that goes in here. So there's a couple of specialty stitches here, and I think there's one over here. And then I'm into E, and E is a smaller block. It does sort of line up with where the B is. So if I have a productive stitching night tonight, I think I've got a shot at getting up to E complete today, which means at that point in time, I am fully caught up. I am fully caught up. According to the calendar, E should be completed today. And then I've got 2 weeks to get F done. So we've moved on to chart number 2. Right. Right, so I've got this one left to do, and I've got these 2 left to do, and then I'm on to E, which is, you know, this is regular cross stitching. So I feel like it's doable. So check back next week and see if I get that accomplished. Having that moment, the closer I hold this to the camera, because the sun's moving, it's going to come out the other side in just a second. So not bad. I forgot to do the math as to how far I'm at in terms of my percentage of, all right, let's just put that somewhere else. So one of the things that I forgot to talk about last week, so I have decided for sure that it was interesting watching the video last week, that, yeah, for sure this is a better colorway. I like it better on the Silvery Moon Lugana. So that decision is made. So I don't have the other one to show because I've made the decision now that this is the correct fabric for me for this particular piece with my color changes. Oops. One of the things that I forgot to talk about last week is when I was redoing chart number 1, I made a couple of changes. 1, I fixed the mistakes that I made in the first round. 2, I think my buttonhole stitch came out a little bit better. Practice makes perfect. I think the buttonhole stitch came out a little bit better for me. And what I took from round 1 was, remember I changed this, I chose a much paler of the mauves that I have in my color palette for this particular stitch. So I put it in a paler one, took it out, put it in this one. So round 2, I kept that lesson. But when I was doing these eyelet stitches, I decided that I was going to make it consistent. Now the funny thing is, when I put it in, I was like, oh, like, yeah, I remember doing this in round 1 and thinking that the lighter one was the better choice. But since it worked out to be the correct color in other spots, right? So I used it here, it's used here, and I actually changed this from the darkest mauve to this medium one, which I like better. I changed it when I was putting in the eyelets in. Now, the funny thing is, now that I've done that, I don't like it. My first instinct was correct, that the paler version was a better choice in here, but I've already stitched it. It's not a big enough deal for me to rip out those eyelet stitches and redo them in the paler one. I say that now, check back later, but for now I'm going, it's close enough. But I am taking the lesson from this, and I applied it when I did this specialty stitch over here, which is, of course, I'm going to have to look it up because I can't remember what it was. Double herringbone, I should have known that. So this stitch over here. So I did pull out the lightest one and used it in this one and was like, yeah, that is correct. So really what the lesson is that I've learned is that when it comes to specialty stitches where it is a combination of the darkest mauve and another mauve, that for me, the correct level of contrast is using Excuse me. See, I'm gonna have to take another drink. Is to use the darkest mauve as called for, and then technically not using, if it's just sort of the light mauve, not using my replacement, but actually using a lighter version of that. And I thought I brought them. I didn't bring them. Oh yes, I did. There they are. Like I swear I brought them out here. So this is the four colors of mauve that I have on my, in Floss Away bags on my project ring for this particular project for me to choose from. So on the eyelets I used, and sorry for the glare, but I'm not taking them out of the bags. I used those two as the combination of colors. And really, when you're, for me, doing a specialty stitch where it's using two mauves, I have made the decision that this combination is not enough contrast for me. So hence, on the double herringbone, I moved up a level and used these two colors. So that's 4636 and 4633 as the contrast. Now, I still have one that's even lighter, because technically in one of the later patterns, there is one that calls for a very light mauve. So at that point in time, when I get to that stitch, I'll have to make a decision which of these two versions I choose to use. But I have made the decision on now going forward, any specialty stitch that has two mauves with this darkest, with the 4636, that my contrasting mauve will be the 4633. So that decision's made. Yeah. So again, not bad. So again, as I said last week, my plan is to go back to my regular schedule where I'm only working on this on Sundays. So last week I did only work on it on Sunday, the 27th. So I will work on this again tonight and then put it away. So hopefully if I have a good stitching evening, I can get all through E completed. And if I don't, I'm not going to be worried about it, because then I have 2 Sundays left to do F. And generally I find I don't need a full 2 evenings to get any given letter completed. But it would be nice if I could get all of E completed, because then it means over the next 2 Sundays, it means I can start to work ahead again, which I like, because we all know there's going to come a day where I'm going to fall behind due to a variety of reasons. Life reasons come up all the time. So there's my sampler of stitches for this week. Okay. So on the 28th, I stuck with my plan, and I continued to work on the Banquet, my canvas work piece by Frida's Fancy Stitching. So that's what that's supposed to look like. And we're coming in. I didn't get an uber amount of stitching complete, but every stitch that's a stitch in a project is 1 stitch closer to completion. So this is where this piece ended up after that evening of work. So I got these 2 blocks in and started working on this one. Got the center panel, which has a really complicated Jessica stitch. I always have to follow the the diagram is fantastic, but I really do have to follow the diagram as I'm working around to get this one. And Frida did a fantastic job, because it sort of breaks it out into 4 separate steps, so you can see where you are as you're going along. So started working on that, got a little bit more of the metallic in. So there's more to do on this block as well, again, as this I fold it in half. This big border that goes up the side here, and then a small border that goes all the way around it. So didn't get part 8 complete, but you know, got a chunk more in there. So we're making progress. So I think it's very comfortable for me to say that I have every expectation that over the course of 2022 that this piece is going to be completed. I know. So I'm just going to hold that up again because I think it looks lovely. It's not finished, but it looks lovely. All right. So that was the 28th. Then of course came March 1st, and it was funny because I was talking to a friend of mine, and they made a comment about, I said I had my new start, and they were like, do I know what your new start is? And I said, of course you know, and they couldn't remember it. And so, you know, I like to tease people when they can't remember things that I think that they know. So said, you'll have to watch on Sunday because then you'll remember. So March 1st, of course, my new start was the March Cottage from the Cottage of the Month series by Country Cottage Needleworks. Before we go on to that, before I show that, okay, because I forgot this last week and I said we were too far into something else for me to go back and fix it. We aren't too far into something else for me to go back and fix this one. Okay, so on my canvas piece, the thing that I wanted to talk about last week is I am using my Hemostats. I used my Hemostat a lot in this round, and to an extent where I thought it was really, really interesting because I did not own these when I did the first 4 charts. For the next 4 that I've been working on, I have used these a ton. So thank you to my friend who said that I should get these, because yes, it absolutely has simplified some of the things, you know, as I was talking about, the more dense the stitch, it was harder for me to get pull my needle through on the other side, and that's where these tools come in. So I will put a link to these in the notes below if you're interested in seeing what this looks like. I of course got the ones from my LNS because they're the pretty version. I do think you can go online to somewhere like Amazon and just search for Hemostat, and options will come up for you. But I will put a link to these ones that you can get from Traditional Stitches. But yeah, this is turned into a very good tool in my arsenal of tools, and used it a lot while I was working on the banquet, now that I've got them. Okay. Okay. Now back to where I was. March 1st, started my Cottage of the Month. And here is my, where could I possibly have lost the, there it is. I'm like, where did I put that backing piece? Okay, so here's where I got to on the March Cottage. Not terribly close to a finish. So there's a fair amount left to go, but of course, as you'll see from the topic this week, I have a new rotation going on, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well. The interesting thing for this is, surprisingly, so for the brown here for the roof, which there's some brown on the ground, and it's also going to be the brown in the tree, I went with the called for brown, which is Weeks Dye Works Pecan. Let me just check that. Yes. Now I did debate it. I pulled out some of the browns that I have used in both January and February and tried them, hold them up as a contrast, and decided to go with the pecan. And I like it. And you can see a little bit of the variegation coming in here in the roof, which I liked. You'll laugh because I also debated whether I was going to change out the greens, and I left them the way they are. They're not too bad. I thought about changing them to slightly more of a blue undertone, but I decided that this is March, and March is spring, and as things are starting to green up, they do tend to be a little bit on the yellowy green side. So I left the greens alone, which meant then I for sure had to change something else. And so the color that I changed was the pink. So I'm not using the called for pink. And I brought it because I wanted to show you the level of contrast. So the called for pink for this is DMC 957. Sorry, I'm just going to strand this down to 2 strands. Now, as always, it will be very interesting to see if this shows up on camera the same way it does in real life. Actually, I'm going to leave it as the 6 because I think it gives a bigger contrast. Okay, so the called for is DMC 957. Oh yeah, that's not going to show up very well at all. Let's see if I change. Nope. All right, not showing up on camera very well at all. So now, so I changed it from 957 and I ended up using 605. And because holding them up together will show you the level of contrast. So when I was pulling it out, I was like, you know, conceptually in my head, I was like, I was fine with pink. Generally, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a color version of, for a house that I would enjoy the contrast on. A greenhouse with pink shutters, it's, anyway, not necessarily what I would do in real life, but this is not real life. But I just found that this was too high a contrast. So I still kept it a pink, but I toned it down quite a bit. So again, so I've changed the called for 957 and I've taken it down to DMC 605. And I'm happy with that change. Again, when I originally pulled out the 957, so 957, according to the chart, is called geranium, and it was quite a contrast, and I didn't necessarily enjoy it. So now, again, looking at this in the camera right now, I feel like it's dulling it down a little more than it is in real life. And again, yeah, it's hard to see in this current version of lighting. In real life, I'm happy with the level of contrast, and as always, it's my piece, so as long as I'm happy with it, that's the most important thing. So yeah, so that's where I'm at on March. There's a ways to go. Again, my goal on this one is to make sure that this cottage is completed in the month of March. So normally, like in January, February, with the rotations that I was using at that point in time, I was usually able to get the cottage done usually by about 7th, 8th, 9th of the month, depending on how many other things were going on at the beginning of the month. So normally it was sort of like generally in about the first weekish that it was finished. This is not going to get finished in like the technical first week. We'll see how much time it gets this week, whether or not I can pull it out by next Sunday, whether or not that gets finished. But I'm happy with the start on it. And again, there's a plan to make sure that it actually gets completed in the current month. All right. So then on the 2nd is the beginning of what's driving my new rotation. So January and February, because I always like to try out new rotations, because one of these days I'll figure out the one that's perfect for me. But specifically, there's a new rotation for March because I like to do a Lent stitch. I did a Lent stitch last year and tried a rotation for that, and learned from that 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 version of the rotation did not work for me. So here's where the funnies come in. So my Lent project for 2022 is the same Lent project as last year, only with a different rotation. So this is the Thea Gouverneur Jerusalem, which I bought as a kit. I bought it. It comes in 2 different ways. You can get it with a 18 count Aida, or you can get it with 36 count linen. I got the linen version of it. I did take a picture before I started to stitch on it, and I've already decided with a few things that are going on today that I'm not going to have time to edit this. So sorry, if you want to see where it was before I started, you'll have to go back to last year and see where I ended up on this one. We'll talk about it when I hold it up, but this is so this is my Lent stitch for 2022 as well. And I feel like I got great stitching in on it so far already. I'm very happy with my progress on this particular project this week. So yeah, this is not, again, this is not a small one. This is a gigantic piece. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. So yeah, because the light is just not coming. So there's where I'm at the moment. So what did I get accomplished this week? So I've done a lot of fill-in up here. This center part is almost filled in, worked more on this outside border, did a little bit over here, and started working on this, the dome, which is the Dome of the Rock. This is the Church of All Nations. This is going to be the Dome of the Rock when it gets stitched in. So as far as I'm concerned, I've made huge progress this week. I'm very, very happy with my progress so far. So what was my rotation last year on this piece? So for Lent last year, I was trying to do one of those, you know, those groups that have like the daily 30. And so I tried my version of the daily 30, which turned into, I'm not good at cutting it off after 30 minutes because I don't feel like I've gotten enough progress. So last year I worked on it every day through Lent, I think right up to Easter Sunday. And I was doing 30 to 60 minutes a day on this project. And it was generally more than 30, didn't go over 60 minutes. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it. So that's where I learned that's not a rotation that works for me, because I just don't see, and certainly not on a project of this level where there's as many colors as there are. So here's all the funny things that tie into this week's topic as well as last week's topic, as well as my thoughts at the beginning of this. Again, this is a kit. So I'm using these crazy project cards, this lovely rat's nest of things. So my laugh to myself as I was working on it this week, going, this drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. I hate this. I hate these systems. Now the problem with the way it is and the number of colors and the crazy symbols, like this is not, like I can't put this in a floss away bag set easily. So I'm going to, for the life of this project, work off of these dumb project cards that will drive me, hopefully not insane, but will drive me to distraction and disaster. And as I was doing that, every time I was wending my way through those project cards, I'm like, I truly don't understand why anybody likes those floss tags. Like, I don't, I don't understand. And I know that there are a lot of people who love them. And again, this is the perfect example of, if it works for you, fantastic. Wow, it does not work for me. And that's okay too. I'm going to suffer through it while I work on this project because, you know, that's my, at this point, I'm saying that's my only option that will work, but wowza. Now, tying into last week's subject, this is my joke saying, as much as I like to opine on things, I don't always follow my own instructions. So here's the perfect example of that. So here's my lovely scroll rod. You can see how close the fabric is coming here to the end and how close it is on this end, right? The real answer is I probably should have gotten a scroll rod that was an inch longer, but the answer was, when I was setting this up, I was using scroll rods that I had in my stash, and I didn't have ones that were longer than this. So it technically fits, it's on here, but it is, like I say, an inch would have been better because, again, it's because I don't think I could pull it very taut. Like it just fits on the scroll rods. So that pulling it taut as I was basting it on here didn't really happen that much. I kind of just got it on. And again, because I just got it on, like I think you can see that my fabric here on the sides is very loose. And as much as I try to do things, you know, with tightening, rolling up on the top and bottom, there's only so much tension I can get going. So I didn't show these last week, and I didn't show them specifically because I couldn't give you a link. So if you're coming back again, this is what I use for side tensioners. And so it's really a Velcro thing with this clip. So it clips onto your fabric. I'm going to do this wrong. I just know it. Of course I can't get it to work while I'm doing it on camera, because that's how everything works, right? All right, so you'll clip it onto your fabric, and then use the Velcro to pull it off to the side. Now again, this, even here, this is not the perfect system because I am so close to the end, but I can use it to get a little bit more tension in here when I'm stitching. But again, because it is right up on the edge, it's not fantastic. Because I don't have that space to actually, again, why is it a problem? Because I don't have space technically at the end of the scroll rod to pull it tight to add that tension in the middle of my fabric. But it's better than nothing. And I look at it and go, yeah, whatever. But and again, this is one where I specifically basted this onto my scroll rod because I went as far as I was concerned. I do have other relatively long scroll rods, so I wasn't concerned about sort of taking them out of stash. And given the size of this project, right, this is going to take me a long time. So this is my project for Lent again. The other thing that I did this week, which will end up being a topic for later as well, is I did spend some of my time, so I scanned, so with it being a kit, I got a paper pattern. The paper pattern is on 11 by 17 pieces of paper. I have now scanned that. I've scanned the pattern in as a PDF. I have downloaded Markup RXP onto my Apple device, and I am using it. So I only started using it on Friday and Saturday. So Wednesday and Thursday I did it the traditional way. Friday and Saturday is when I started using it, the PDF version in Markup RXP, and it's helping. So again, this is again, as you can tell from here, sort of when you get into this design, it is full coverage. As you can tell from these, egregious, 3 project cards, there's a bajillion colors. I don't remember how many colors there are off the top of my head, but there's a lot of colors, which means there's a lot of color changes. And so what the app is allowing me to do is to try to do a better job of finding all of the symbol colors. Because what was happening when I was doing it on my own is that you sort of come along and you go like, okay, here's the run and etc. and you're close, but you missed the one that was 5 stitches over with none of that color around it, and you missed the one where you could have easily sort of gone over the 5 stitches and worked and stitched it, as opposed to coming back later and going like, oh, look at that missing symbol. Oh, I just finished stitching that. Isn't that lovely? So it's helping. One of the interesting things on this particular one, again, because this is a PDF, and I complained about the symbols when I started working on this last year, is that there are so many symbols that are so very close that even the app is having a problem differentiating. And with it's also struggling with ones given the there is back stitching in this chart, which goes over top of your stitching, and so it's got the back stitching over top of the symbol. So when I look at the paper chart, I can see the symbol underneath the back stitching, but the app is having difficulty making that differentiation. So even when I choose a symbol, it isn't necessarily picking all of them up, or in some cases it is choosing the symbol and getting most of them as well as a few extra. So I am finding at the moment that I am having to need both the paper copy and the app to figure it out. And again, I don't necessarily think that it's necessarily the app's fault, because some of these symbols, this is the one where I literally have to hold the piece of paper with the chart in the hand while I'm going through the 3 project cards to find the symbol, to make sure I really am getting the one that is correct. There are that many symbols that are that close. So I'm not faulting the app at all. I do think it is the fault of the symbols that are used in this particular chart. But it is helping. It has certainly helped me. It has successfully found ones where I would have missed them if I hadn't been using it in the app. So I think that helped speed up some of it, which is why I've got as much progress here as I do. I'm just going to hold this up and hope that you can mostly see that. So it's coming along. Again, this is a huge chart. Sorry. This is a 10-page chart. I'm still on my first of the 10 pages, which happens to technically be page 3 because I started it in the center, as I like to do. And according to the app, I'm not surprised. It says that I have got 70% of that page completed, which translate. So in the app, it also it'll give you the stats for your page as well as the stats for the entire PDF. So not surprisingly, I'm about 70% done on page 1, my first page, and it not surprisingly equates to I am 7% of the entire project because it's a 10-page chart. So the math is kind of holding out the same. So I'm gonna continue on with that this week. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a bit when we actually get to the topic, which is about what is my new rotation. Okay, so free charts. I didn't print out any of the free charts, but what I am going to highlight is the free charts that have been created in support of the Ukraine. I'm going to put the links to the ones that I am aware of, which may not be all of them. So if you know of others that you feel that should be drawn to people's attention, please put them in the comment section down below. So I'm going to have the link to the one from Jacob Modern Folk Embroidery. I'm going to have the link for the one done by Vivsters. I have one from Long Dog Samplers. I have one by Maria Bravko. I know there's 4. There might be a 5th one. But if you're looking for something to stitch in support, to sort of do some stitching support for the Ukraine, there will be a number of free charts in the notes below if you'd like to get those. There's also been a lot of posting on Instagram about ways to support stitchers in the Ukraine, particularly those who have designs. So if you, and it's through most of the ones they've been highlighting. You can go to Etsy, look for PDF patterns, search for designers where the source is from the Ukraine, so that you can get some funds to them. They don't particularly PDFs because then they don't have to send you anything. It can be done automatically through the Etsy system, but you can still get funds to them. When I was putting up the notes for last week where I was highlighting the shop where I got my arabesques, which is in the Ukraine, not surprising to me is that they have temporarily shut down their store on Etsy. You know, I understand that, but if you are looking for arabesques and want to hold off so that you could potentially support them once the situation in the Ukraine is not quite so strife-ridden, and you want to support them, maybe hold off on your purchase of the arabesques until you can purchase from them. Anyway, so those charts will be linked in the notes section below if you're looking for those. The other thing, so in terms of acquisitions, I have not actually, I don't have any of my purchases available for show at the moment. But I did get a phone call from my mother as my parents continue to try to clear some things out of their house. Again, we've had a couple of hard years where we've cleaned out a couple of relatives' houses, so it certainly has made my parents very aware of what they have in their house. And my mom phoned and said, "We have these items. We don't ever use them. Would you be interested in them?" And I said yes. So these are hot plate mats from, and I would say it's got to be at least 1940s, maybe slightly earlier, maybe into the 1930s. So they are covered. Again, my light has come at the weird. There you go. So this is generally, so this is the smallest of them. So they have this lace trim, which I want to say crochet trim. Not 100% certain on that. And then this embroidered letter G. Now G is the initial for my paternal grandmother's maiden name. And so I took these and went, I absolutely will figure out a way to put these to use, even just as hot placement. I'm fine with those. So I've got them in 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. There's the G. And again, so that's what's leading me to the time frame for when I think that these were created, because my paternal grandparents were married, I want to say 1941, I think, is when they got married. I'm pretty sure it's 1941. Anyway, so for her to have her maiden initial on it is what's leading me to, so either 1940, maybe in the 30s was when this was, when she put these together. So those have been added into my stash, and I will put them to use. Okay. All right. Again, I'm looking at my table going, how are we doing? I think we're in good shape here. Okay, so let's talk about the topic. What is my new rotation? Okay, I'm hauling it back out again. Yeah, it's huge. So my rotation for this Lent is, because this is my Lent stitch, I will be stitching on this every day for Lent right through, and I will stitch on it on Easter Sunday as well. And then this is going to go away again for a bit. So it will be fascinating to see how much progress I get on this. So unlike last year's Lent, where I time limited myself to the 30 to 60 minutes a day and moved on to a second project that day, I am going to stitch on this every day as much as I want. Now, I totally acknowledge that I'm also taking the lessons learned from the Never Ending Nativity, that there may come a time over the next 49 days, which is technically the entire time between the first day of Lent and Easter Sunday, where I may get tired of working on this. It was really nice working on it this week because I haven't worked on it in effectively a year. So it was new and fresh, and then I had all of the excitement of, pulling in the, working on it with the app and what that did for me. So it's great. It was new and it was fresh, and that was exciting. So, and again, very happy with my progress. Very happy with my progress on this, just in the 5 days that I've stitched on this. So I have done my stitching today on this particular piece. It was the brown down here. So I have done my stitching on this for today, because my Sunday evenings are reserved for sampler stitches. So I will work on it every day for as much as I want. If I'm not feeling it, my minimum requirement is 1 thread length. So pick a symbol and then put in 1 thread. All right, sorry about that. Don't know what happened, but everything shut down. I thought I caught when it ended. Did some editing, discovered that I didn't catch it very well. So we're back to really talk about the topic. So and I'm going to forget where I was before this. So yeah, so this is what I'm using for my Lent rotation. I am going to work on this every day. See, that's a better picture. Look at how well that's coming along. Work on this every day for as much as I want. The minimum amount is 1 thread length. But if I want to spend that entire day's stitching allotment of time on this one project, I can do that. If I am not really feeling like I want to work on Jerusalem, you know, one of the lessons that I learned from the Never Ending Nativity is sometimes you're better off giving yourself a bit of a break, so that you can come back with a little more excitement about the project. Now, you know, Lent goes for 49 days, and you know, that's a good chunk of time. So there is the possibility over the course of those 49 days that I may kind of go like, I can't believe I'm still working on Jerusalem, even though that's the goal that I've set for myself. So that's why the rotation is a minimum of 1 length of thread. Because if I get to that point where I say, I'm tired of working on this, I want to do something different, I've got the luxury of doing that. I can pick up any of the whips that I have going, so whether they're from 2020 or 2021 or before that or whatever, I can work on any whip that I want as long as I've put in 1 thread length today, 1 thread length on Jerusalem. So for example, for today, because it's Sunday and my Sunday evenings are reserved for sampler of stitches, I made sure that I put in my thread length already. So I've already done my stitching on this project. I did put in my 1 thread length. Pretty much it was the brown here. It's really because I had to pick up it's because I picked a symbol up here. It was 2 stitches of brown, and it turned out there was a huge chunk down here. So that's where my thread length went. Put it all in. And again, that shows you that even with 1 thread length, there's progress. Like, that's a decent amount of progress for today, even though all I was doing was putting in 1 thread length. It's a little harder, like on a piece like this, if you're only putting in, you know, a couple of stitches here, filling in, you know, these blank spots. It doesn't look the same. This was a really nice one today because I was like, oh, there's a big chunk, and I can just put the rest of my thread in there and get it all stitched up. So that was good. It was a great one today, you know, because today is Sunday, so tonight is sampler of stitches, but I've got my thread length in for today. So that's the rotation that I'm using for Lent this year, is a minimum of 1 thread length per day to a maximum of whatever I want. And on the days where it's a minimum because I want to give myself a break, or just because I want to work on something different, you know, for example, the March cottage, that is one of my goals, is that I want to have that finished in the month of March. I'm holding it because I think it looks fantastic. It sounds, yeah, I'm hoping to make really good progress on this piece this Lent. And again, because I'm having to edit now because everything shut down and all that good stuff, and I lost stuff, I will be putting in the picture of what it looked like before, so you'll be able to see better that this is a good chunk of progress. And again, that's 5 days worth of stitching. So yeah, it will be really interesting to see at the end of Lent just how much I've gotten accomplished. And again, using it in the app has helped me out. So again, what the benefits of that will be helpful. So that's the version of the rotation that I am planning on using for Lent this year. So the minimum of 1 thread length, and then as much as I want, or I can switch to any whip that I want, period, for whatever I want through the 49 days. So it'll be interesting. It will be interesting to see for me if that is a better rotation, which will allow me to get good progress on my Lent piece as well as work on other things and get other goals accomplished as well. So that's the rotation that I'm planning on using for Lent this year. There are lots of if you're looking for options for rotations for March, there are lots of options. So for example, Jen Lee from Corks and Stitches, who's doing the amazing 222 new starts this year. Love watching those ones come along. You know, for her, she developed her version of March Madness because Mania, which occurs in May, given her work schedule, didn't work for her. And so she moved that forward to March, and she said, well, I'm going to do March Madness. And so her March Madness is consistent with what she does most Marches, is she's starting a new project every day for 31 days. It ties in nicely with her 222 new starts for 2022. So that's great for her, and I'll be following along and be interested to see what she's starting this month. You know, so that's an example of where if you see a rotation that somebody's doing like Mania and you're like, but man, that just doesn't work for me in May for whatever reasons, 1,200 reasons, do it in whatever month you want. It's your rotation. You can do what you want. There are other people. So Steel City Stitchers has a version that of March Madness that ties in with the college basketball playoffs. So they've got brackets set up and all that kind of stuff. I will put a link to the video that they did explaining their March Madness and how their brackets are working. Now they have an overarching goal of trying to work on something so that you can finish the stitching on the project as well as completely finishing your project by the end of March. So you've seen how many fully finished objects I've shown you, so you know that that's not necessarily going to be my goal if I ever participated in that. But if you want to do something that's going to help drive you to that type of a goal, that's a great way to do it. So again, I will link to the video that they have explaining their version of March Madness. And even amongst the 4 women, they do it differently amongst the 4 of them. So, you know, even within their version, they've got different versions going on. I know there's another version out there where it's sort of like same sort of a bracket system, but I think it's like you've got the 8 projects and you spend 2 days on each of the projects, and then you've got, which then whittles down to 4 projects, and then is it 4 days per? I'm gonna lose the math here. No, that doesn't make any sense. Let's 16, 12. Yeah, there you go. It's 2 days for each of the levels. Yeah, so 2 days on 8 projects, and then you get your 4 winners from that. 2 days on each of those 4 projects, which anyway, that's how it works out to get to your, it's like going, yeah, let's do the math on that. So, you know, there are lots of different options of what people are doing just in the month of March in terms of rotations. So if you're looking for ideas, you can check those out. Because I personally have decided, and again, this is all courtesy of Vonna Pfeiffer, the amazing Twisted Stitcher. If you're not following her on Instagram, you should, because she just does amazing stuff. She got me started on doing a Lent project. And so I started that last year. I really like the concept. That's not true. I started it 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I started that. You know, and again, as I'm doing them, I'm doing different rotations, waiting to see what the right Lent rotation is for me. So I'm not doing March Madness. I'm doing my version of a Lent rotation. So we'll see how that works out. In my ever continuing version of trying to find out rotations that work for me. And again, your rotation doesn't have to be static. What works for you, again, so this is just a Lent rotation. I had a rotation that I used for January and February up to the beginning of Lent. I have a Lent rotation. I'm planning on having a different rotation after Easter Sunday, right? And what that's going to look like, quite frankly, I haven't quite decided on. And the reason why I haven't quite decided on that is because I'm waiting to see what I learned from this particular version of a rotation. And again, part of that, what I'm trying to do through the thing, you know, my various versions of rotations is to learn something from the rotations about what does and doesn't work for me and gets me to stitch more, where I get to see more progress and accomplish my goals. So, you know, again, I learned a lot from my Lent rotation last year. Daily 30 doesn't work for me. Even as I said last year, it might work for me if I was working on, if all I was working on was like the cottage of the month, right? It's a much smaller project. It's, you know, more sort of very solid colors of it's much more limited in the numbers of colors. The design is simpler. It's not, you know, it's not the 472 colors that seem to be going into Jerusalem, you know, so it's a different project. So daily 30 might work for me if I were doing it on this project. But I found last year, you know, trying to time limit myself to 30 to 60 minutes on the run project set and putting it down and doing something else ended up being very frustrating for me as a stitcher. And I didn't enjoy it. You know, even last year I was like going, I would have rather have done like, you know, several hours in a chunk and then maybe taking a day off, but then that didn't accomplish my Lent goal of trying to work on something every day during the season of Lent. You know, so again, you know, I'm setting these goals for myself so I can make them whatever I want, but I learned a lesson. I stuck with it for the 49 days. I did it, and then at the very end said, I am not doing that again. I tried it. I gave it the good college try. I tried it all the way through the season of Lent and went, wow, this doesn't work for me. And that's a lesson learned. So I'm, you know, again, it's going to be very interesting for me because I've specifically chosen the exact same project to do a different Lent rotation on. As I've said to you before, I've got a 5-year stitching plan. I can assure you that my Lent goals and my Lent projects over the course of the 5 years is not expected to be the same one every time at this moment in time. Check back on Easter Sunday to see if I've changed any of those views. But I'm using this as an opportunity saying I'm using the exact same project, but I'm doing a different rotation. So how different is my outcome? And already I can say, just based on the 5 days that I've been doing so far, I think this rotation is going to work a lot better for me. I'm already feeling better about it and think that I'm going to make a lot of progress, and I'm going to love seeing how this project is coming together. So, you know, but who knows? Check back on Easter Sunday and we'll see what my decisions are, see what I've learned, see what I do with my whips. So it's going to be very interesting because I've got some very specific things to do, but I'm also building in flexibility into my rotation to say, maybe I just need to do something else for a couple of days, right? Still will work on Jerusalem for my minimum 1 thread length, but then I can work on anything else. So it'll be interesting to see how many times I use that loop. I don't want to call it a loophole. Use the optionality that I built into my rotation. I don't know. Right now, I'm really excited to work on Jerusalem. I'm really excited to work on Jerusalem. I think it's fantastic. Again, the progress this week in the last 5 days has been enough where I'm like going, I'm really excited to see how the progress that I'm going to get on this project over the course of this Lent season. All right. So with that, I hope everybody has a good week. Again, thoughts and prayers for the people of the Ukraine. Wishing safety for all parties. Yeah, it's you know, as I said, the videos coming out of the Ukraine are just heartbreaking. So I hope everybody will do their best this week to stay safe and stay healthy. And I hope that you all make some time to do some stitching. I know that, you know, myself included, I've had periods of time where I maybe didn't do stitching and I just watched some Flosstube or something else or listened to a book or whatever. And there are always those points in time where you're just sort of going, I just can't. But I hope that maybe you can take some of those opportunities where you go, you know, spend some time doing some stitching. health benefits of actually stitching. They've done studies on it, and there are benefits to providing a sort of a sense of calm as you're working on it, the ability to take your focus off some of the things that may be causing you stress because you're focusing on something else. So I do hope that you take time this week for yourself and spend some time doing some stitching, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.